Welcome back to Clarkston Lighthouse Guidance. I am Chandler Fleming, owner and lead therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling. Just want to remind everybody that send in your questions to Facebook and you can find them on the air.
I am Victoria Fleming, co-owner and therapist at Clarkston Lighthouse Counseling. Welcome to today's show where we are going to discuss parenting. How to not lose your mind while parenting.
Right.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough subject. There are many parents out there. I'm a parent myself. My daughter is actually in the studio with us today, so that's kind of exciting. And you know, our title is getting your kids to mind before you lose your own. So that's sometimes I feel like as a parent, it'd be easy to lose my mind in that job as a parent.
So we've often heard it said that parenting is the toughest job you will ever love.
Oh, most definitely. You know, it's an awesome experience to be a parent, but you know, there's really no cookbook. There's no real one direct answer that will help you with your parenting. And you know, some parents that I work with, they're better with kids at different stages of their lives. I have some moms come in and say, you know, he's not really good when the baby cries or the toddler cries. He's not really good with it. And then later, that same parent will come back and say, you know, I'm glad I have my husband. He's much better with them now that they're teenagers. So different stages of life, different parenting skills. Some of the stuff we talk about today kind of spans the gamut from quite young all the way even to adult children. So.
Okay, so you're saying that sometimes a mom may be better at a certain age, maybe when they're young, all the way through elementary years, but maybe dad may be better with teenagers or vice versa.
Right.
Or there may be those super parents who are good the whole span.
Right.
But that is okay if you have some areas of strength and weakness, and we're going to look at some techniques that can help.
Oh, for certain. And you know, and the thing that kind of jumps out to me is teenage girls and moms. A lot of times that's a real difficult time. I'm sure a lot of the moms out there that have teenage daughters, or a lot of teenage daughters who have moms, understand the frustration of that period of life. So.
Absolutely. So why do kids behave the way they do?
You know, there's a lot of reasons, and you know, we are a people that really want to know the why, but it's difficult because there's a variety of reasons that play a role. The schools, parents, maybe parents work too much or they get a divorce or things along those lines, but really nailing down the why can be quite difficult. And I do have parents that kind of come in, spend a lot of time trying to figure out the why, and they think they got it nailed down, but then it doesn't change anything. And that's one of the things that our topic's going to talk about today is behavior modification. And what was unique about behavior modification is they really ignored the why and looked at the behavior and looked at what are our goals, what are those things that we want to change. So that's pretty important.
Okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
So we want to get a little bit away from the blame game. And placing fault.
Sure.
You know, whether it's the school, it's TV, it's culture's impact, mom's not doing enough, dad's not doing enough, and look more at techniques, certain skills, important skills that will help impact our children's behavior.
Yeah. And I love the picture, a picture of somebody just juggling a bunch of balls, because it is skills. And just like juggling, it takes a lot of practice. And it's not an easy feat, but it's pretty important.
All right, so as we look at some of those important skills, what are some of the things that people need to know?
Well, first of all, that they're supposed to be the parent, that they should be in charge, that they are a major influence on their kids' lives, and they provide safety. Kids like boundaries.
Okay, so recognize your role.
Definitely recognize your role.
Okay, so the parent should be the parent.
The parent should be the parent. They are in charge.
Okay.
One of the things that I love talking about in session is the Chandler Golden Rule. Now, to be honest, most of the time, my parents like it better than the teenager, but we all know the Golden Rule, do unto others, that sort of thing. The Chandler Golden Rule is whoever has the gold makes up the rules.
Okay.
So in most parent-child relationships, that's the parent who has the gold. So they have a great ability to be able to make those rules. And it's kind of funny because when you talk to teenagers about things that they think that are their gold, their iPod, their phone, their car, and lending that things to other people, they really have a strong concept that this is mine and I have a right to control these sort of items. So the golden rule kind of applies if you presented in an appropriate manner.
Okay, so in recognizing our role as a parent, we need to recognize that we are the boss and that
Yes.
actually kids want us to be the boss. And in fact, in that one slide, it showed a fence. And I think a fence is a really good analogy to what we do as parents, is that
Yes.
we're setting clear boundaries. It's not so much like a dog on a leash where it's super short and the child doesn't have room to grow, especially as they are becoming teenagers and young adults. But it's a fence, it's guidelines that help them know what's acceptable and what's not.
Yeah, definitely. It was really amazing in the very early part of my career. I worked with a girl, and actually my role there was just to kind of keep the peace. I hadn't even gotten my bachelor's degree at that point. So I came in and kind of sat in the room, and this girl was pretty wise to the world. She actually hustled pool and made a lot of money hustling pool. She dressed up, and she had actually photographs of herself that she looked like she was 25 when she was 15.
Wow.
But anyways, the important part of the story is that during the session, she turns to her mom and she goes, "Mom, you don't get it. I've got plenty of friends. I need a mom. You don't even notice when I'm gone till 3 in the morning." And this girl who was very worldly, very wise, had lots of life experiences, a lot of negative life experiences. She was crying out for a mom.
Mom, please be mom.
Mom, please be mom.
Absolutely.
And the other story that I love telling is a 15-year-old kid that I worked with, and he was just totally out of control, and there was constantly fighting back and forth between he and his parents. And so one day, his parents came in and they took everything away. He had 2 pairs of underwear, 1 set of clothes. And so talked to the parents, they said things seem to be going really good. And the kid comes into my office, kind of sits there, and he goes, I said, "So how are things going?" He crosses his arms and he goes, "It's okay." And I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Oh, you know what's going on." And I said, "Well, you don't seem really angry." He goes, "I was really messing things up, and it's probably a good thing." So even these kids that were pretty strongly out of control, they looked for their parents for that guidance.
So even though everything was taken from his room, he had no stereo, no furniture even, just a mattress, some clothes, a pillow, blankets, that's it.
Right, he didn't get a pillow. A pillow was a privilege.
Okay,
So,
all right. But he was actually glad because the
he was
parents set
glad.
parameters and
They
took
set
control.
parameters. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it made him feel a lot more safe.
Okay.
So-
All right, so recognize the role, and then what?
Pick your battles wisely. And this is a really tough one because we all pick our battles differently. In our pictures of the battle, one of the things that I notice is there's a lot of destruction. And we want to avoid those battles if possible because there is destruction. But if you find yourself in a battle with your kid, it's very important that you try to win the battle. You can lose a few battles, but losing too many battles causes you to lose the war.
All right, so help us know how to pick the battles. What does it look like?
Well, I think one of the things is safety first. So you want to pick things that are totally unsafe as your first battles. Pick 2 or 3 battles. If the first 2 are really major, you may only pick 2. Now, a lot of times parents say to me, "Okay, so I am picking a battle of sneaking out of the middle of the night and failing all its classes. What do I do with the other stuff?" And I think it's very important for parents to learn checking behaviors, which is you just kind of verbally let them know that you know. "Hey, by the way, yesterday I asked you to clean your room and you didn't do it. I want you to do better." It's not a threat, there's not a consequence.
Okay.
It's just, "Hey, wanted to let you know." But you got to know what you're going to do. I oftentimes tell parents to write down, what are you going to do if they don't? What if they continue to fail their class? What are you going to do if they continue to sneak out the window? So that's pretty important. The other big key about picking battles is know why you're picking that as a battle. I actually had a mother of a kid who was probably, 10 or 12, and he lied about doing his homework. And mom told me that she grounded him for like 2 months. No electronics, no nothing. And it seemed pretty over the top.
Seems, yeah, a strong reaction.
So I asked her, "What's going on?" And she says, "My ex-husband was an alcoholic and he used to lie to me all the time. And I am not going to raise a liar." And I just asked her one question: who are you punishing? Are you punishing your son or are you trying to punish your ex-husband? And it kind of hit home for her. So she recognized that it was the wrong person she was trying to punish. So pick your battles wisely.
And I think it's a lot like a tug of war. You know, when we engage in a battle, parents on one end of the rope, child's on the other end of the rope, and how much do we want to tug about a particular issue? It's
Right.
exhausting.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times it throws the kid off guard, actually, if we drop the rope
Sure.
and don't tug over something like your room isn't clean.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
And sometimes people fight all the battles the same way. A dirty room versus sneaking out of the night. It's all the same intensity. And again, as in the picture demonstrated, there's usually damage done in battles. So you want to avoid them if possible.
Okay, so I've recognized my role. I am the parent. I pick my battles. Now what? What's the next step?
This is going to be a two-part series, but in part one, I really want to talk about behavior modification. And I love behavior modification because it really looks at the behavior and puts to the side all the whys and all the questions and provides some guidance. So I listed out a bunch of different just kind of behavior modification terms, like reinforcement, something that makes the behavior more likely, punishment, something that makes the behavior go away, and just different types of reinforcement, scheduling, constant reinforcement, intermittent reinforcement. So if you look it up online, you can find all sorts of references to behavior modification and kind of look at those terms.
Okay, so what part of behavior modification do we want to look at today?
I want to look at it as kind of as a whole, behavior modification, but I want to start with primary gain.
Okay.
So the premise of behavior modification, first of all, is that behaviors that are rewarded get repeated. And I'm going to repeat that. Behaviors that are rewarded get repeated. Lots of people do things because of that reward. And the tricky part is the difference between primary gain and secondary gain. Primary gain is what is that first reward? What is that primary obvious reward?
Right.
So the example I most frequently use is take my kids to the grocery store and then they say to me, well, especially when they were younger, Dad, buy me a cookie, buy me a cookie. And I'll say no. And they'll say, please, Dad, please, I'm really hungry and I have a headache, please buy me a cookie. After a while, I cave in and I buy them a cookie.
Right.
And what does that do?
That's a primary gain. They got what they wanted.
They asked for a cookie, I gave them a cookie, and actually I'm rewarding a bad behavior. Mm-hmm. Now, over time, I think parents get better at primary gains. They're able to say, you know what, I'm rewarding their bad behavior. They asked for something, and eventually, over time, I caved in and gave them what they want. And they didn't ask in a positive way. They just kind of wore me down and gave me a headache, so I gave them what they wanted.
Right.
So.
Okay, so, but obviously there's the secondary gain as well. So the primary is the more obvious. They get what they asked for.
Yep.
What
Obvious,
is secondary gain?
The secondary gain is the less obvious indirect reward. So when I came up with slides for this, I tried to find a pretty nurse because I worked with a nurse who was very, very attractive. And when she worked, all the boys would get into fights. And we'd ask, what's going on here? Her shift, all the boys were fighting. So eventually we figured out that it was Stella. Stella was a very beautiful woman. And every time these boys would get in fights, Stella would get involved. They would get Stella's attention. So Stella was the reward. And again, it's those indirect things. The same thing about the cookie example is that going to the store and instead of after 15 minutes of my kids nagging me and giving them a cookie, I say something to them like, you've given me the worst headache, or I start to lose my control, lose my composure. That's a reward because we all want a sense of control. Mm-hmm. And by giving in those cues, we're kind of giving in to them and letting them know, hey, you're not necessarily getting what you really wanted with that cookie, but you're having an effect.
Okay.
And the best example I can think of is a kid that I worked with who actually texted his girlfriend and said, sorry, can't go out tonight, but at least I made my mom miserable. I have to be honest, I kind of identified with him.
Wow, okay.
You know what? If I can't go out and my mom stopped me from being able to go out, the next best thing is making mom miserable.
Okay.
Because it gives you a sense of power, sense of control, and even kids as young as 4, 5, 6, they experience that power.
Okay.
That that attention-seeking behavior. They're getting that attention, and it's nice to get attention. We all like attention.
Absolutely. So whereas with the primary it's direct, with the secondary it's indirect. The boys fighting at the hospital were getting attention, even if it was negative attention that they got from the directors and from the other people. The secondary gain was beautiful Stella gave them what they wanted.
And I encourage a lot of parents to, especially when they're trying to introduce discipline, to ask themselves, what's going on and why is this working? Because a lot of times behaviors continue because it works. So you got to say, hey, what are they getting out of this? What is their secondary gain?
Okay, so we as parents need to be careful of the fact that the child knowing they made us mad, the child seeing us get exasperated, the huffing, the puffing, oh, I have a headache, is a secondary gain.
Yes, for sure.
So what do we do instead? Because we really don't want our child to get the secondary gain, because then it perpetuates the behavior.
Sure. So practice, practice, practice. Work on what is your expression. Try to remain calm. Never let them see you sweat. I had a colleague who said, you got to turn into Mr. Roboto Man. So you're sort of concrete, you're a little stiff, but you don't let them see you sweat, and you remain calm. You develop a sense of humor. You take things lightly. So those are all really important skills, and a lot of people need to practice them, because kids, they live with us long enough to know where our buttons are, and when they start hitting those buttons, we erupt, and when we erupt, they win. They get those secondary rewards.
And really it's the same things that we had taught in an anger management one. We need to stop before we react, think about what's going to happen if we do react, and we need to breathe.
Yes.
And like you said, stay calm, nice and calm. So, yeah, absolutely. All right, so what can we do to reinforce positive behavior versus negative behavior?
I mean, it's really important, and we reinforce a lot in the same ways, but there's actually two types of reinforcement schedules. So one is like a Coke machine, where you put money in and it's constant reinforcement. If I went to a Coke machine and put my money in, after a couple times if I didn't get a Coke, I wouldn't put any more money in. I wouldn't go back. So that constant reinforcement versus a slot machine, which is intermittent reinforcement or kind of variable reinforcement. People sit in front of a slot machine all day believing that the next time they play, the reward's coming. And a lot of times as parents, we're a lot like slot machines. If the kid keeps trying and keeps trying and keeps trying, we are rewarding their behavior. Sometimes primarily we cave in, or sometimes secondarily.
And sadly, intermittent reinforcement is the strongest of the reinforcements. Intermittent reinforcement is the one that will cause the kid to go back over and over and over. So to go to the grocery store and the begging for the cookie, the first time it may have only taken 5 minutes, and the next time it may have taken 15, and then the third time it may have been 7. But as long as the child knows, if I keep at it, if I keep putting coins into the slot machine and I keep pulling the lever, I may get the cookie.
Right, you may get the reward. And that reward may be the cookie, or it may be, hey, I didn't get my cookie, but at least I made my mom miserable because that mean woman would not give me my cookie.
Okay, so we need to be very careful of intermittent reinforcement.
Yes.
So if we want to be more like the Coke machine, where it's consistent, what are some steps we can take?
Well, being consistent, part of it is saying what you mean. I frequently tell parents, say what you mean and mean what you say.
Absolutely.
And so it can be really small things like, saying to a kid, hey, it's time for bed. And they say, I don't want to go to bed. Okay, 5 more minutes. Well, did you really mean it when you said it was time to go to bed? Or were you just kind of feeling them out? So instead of saying, hey, it's time to go to bed, you may say to them, hey guys, what do you think about going to bed now? And so that's really what you mean. You really don't mean, hey, it's time to go to bed. You mean, hey, I want to find out. I want to kind of figure out what's going on here and seeing if you're willing to go to bed. So say what you mean what you say, and just remain consistent. Decide that you're going to follow through on what you say.
Okay, so would it even be wise maybe to set a timer? Let's say that instead of asking, how do you feel about going to bed, or what are you thinking about going to bed, you say in 15 minutes, you need to be in bed.
Sure.
Would there be wisdom in setting a timer?
Oh, sure. Definitely set a timing or whatever cues you need to do to remain on task. Mm-hmm. But the big part is meaning what you say.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we say things that we don't mean. You know what? I'm going to ground you for life. well, we don't mean that. Or other things that we say them, but we really don't mean it.
Mm-hmm. And I like to caution parents, don't punish yourself in punishing your child. I'll never forget, I needed the playtime at McDonald's desperately.
Yes.
I had been looking forward to it all day. I just needed them occupied, and they did something wrong, the kids did. And what do? That's it, we're not going to McDonald's. And as we drove home, I remember thinking, who have I punished?
Yes.
I punished
yourself.
myself, yeah.
And we have a lot more of those kind of tips in part 2. So the last thing I want to talk about under behavior modification is praise. And most people love praise.
Yes, they do.
A lot of times parents are not good at praising. Just come up with your own sayings. Wow, wonderful, fantastic job, good try. Those sort of things definitely improve behavior. One study that was done is they actually took a look at workplace and decided what would be the number one thing to improve productivity. And the number one thing that improved productivity over bonuses, over time off, over increased pay was praise. When they praised people, that was the number one thing that caused productivity to go up.
I remember one hospital we looked at, we had a star system, and if a patient or a doctor or a nurse praised one of the social work team, or really anyone in the hospital,
Yes.
we received a star. And after so many stars, we received a free meal, and then the rewards increased with the more stars, and we absolutely improved our performance. It was exciting to get that acknowledgement in front of other people and to recognize job well done.
Yeah. It's funny too, I have a lot of parents that are afraid to praise because they'll say, well, my kid has all these bad behaviors, and if I praise them, then they're going to think things are okay. That usually it's not an effective technique. Find some legitimate things to praise.
Absolutely.
And if you can't find them, look harder.
Right.
Because a lot of times parents say, well, I don't see anything. Well, you need to work on that. You need to find things that you can legitimately praise.
Okay, so as we wrap up for this part on parenting, any final words?
Just kind of in conclusion, remember parenting can be a tough job in that behavior modification is a really effective technique, that behaviors that are rewarded get repeated. There's some other tips on the screen, you want to look them over. Parenting can be difficult, that you should be in charge. Pick your battles wisely. But we will follow up and give a little quick review next time on our part 2 of the series, but also give you some more practical pointers on effective parenting.
Absolutely, and what an honor and privilege to be a parent and to be
Yes.
able to shape a person as they become an adult and perhaps parents themselves. So thank you so much for joining us today for this show. If you have any questions, please feel free to call us at 248-245-1809 or email us at guidance@clarkstonlighthousecounseling.com. And again, that was guidance@clarkstonlighthousecounseling.com. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
The views expressed in this show are for general educational purposes only and do not constitute professional advice on any subject matter, nor do they necessarily reflect the views or opinions of its guests or of Independence Television. If mental health assistance is needed, please seek professional licensed treatment.